Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to have so many of you join us for our final lecture of the summer. Today's lecture will be an opportunity to learn with one of our excellent and longtime teachers, Gideon Amir. Before I introduce Gideon, I want to highlight our next program in September. As you have probably seen, this is our 40th anniversary year, and a highlight of this year is an evening of learning with Rabbi David Ellenson, who is Chancellor Emeritus of Hebrew Union College. He will deliver 2 engaging lectures exploring truth-telling and reconciliation through the life experiences of Rabbi Leo Beck during World War II. The program will be in person on September 10th at Washington Hebrew Congregation in Washington, D.C. It is $75 to attend the event, which basically covers the cost of a catered dinner, which will happen between the 2 lectures. For those of you outside of the area, we hope to have a recording available after the event. If you want more information, we're putting a link in the chat now where you can register. There's also information there on becoming a sponsor for our 40th anniversary year. And you can always feel free to email me with any questions or thoughts. Okay, now on to today's program. Gideon Amir was born in Holland to Holocaust survivors who moved to Israel in 1947. He grew up in Jerusalem and served in the IDF as a paratrooper. Gideon received his bachelor's degree in mathematics from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem and a master's degree in computer science from the Weizmann Institute of Science in Rehovot. In 1980, he moved to the United States, where he worked as a manager in several companies, including British Telecom and Cisco. In 1999, he pursued his interest in Jewish studies and enrolled as a full-time graduate student at Baltimore Hebrew University, where in 2001, he received his master's degree. Redirecting his passion for teaching from computer science to Jewish and Bible studies, he became an adult Jewish educator for several educational programs, including us here, the Haberman Institute, where he has taught for many years. And with that, I would like to welcome Gideon to the screen for a fascinating exploration of angels in Jewish texts. Welcome, Gideon.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you for the introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here today and to study with so many of you on this topic of angels. I want to start from the end because there are people who think that Judaism does not believe in angels, and I would like therefore to start from the end to demonstrate to you that that's not exactly the case. Let me just share my screen so you can see and follow when I'm talking. Yes, okay. So many of you probably have the tradition on Friday night, either at services or at home, to sing the song that we call Shalom Aleichem. And that song, if you actually look at the words, it starts with the word, peace be unto you, angels of service, angels of the Most High, the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. The whole song is welcoming the angels who are bringing in the Shabbat, and then eventually sending them away with a blessing, sending these angels away when Shabbat ends. So this is clearly talking about the angels, yes? And then we have, for some folks who are using the extended blessing, the Shema on the bed, the Shema that you say before you go to sleep. Yes, people are saying, peace be unto you. To my right, Michael, and to my left, Gabriel. In front of me, Uriel, and behind me, Raphael. And over my head, God's Shekhinah, God's presence. Yes, that means I feel safe going to sleep because there are 4 angels surrounding me, and they are even mentioned by name. And yes, and we have on Simchat Torah, it is customary to call the boys in some synagogues, in more egalitarian synagogues, all the children, to the Torah reading for the whole congregation to recite the verse from Jacob's blessing to Ephraim and Menashe. And Jacob is saying, that is in Genesis chapter 48, verse 16, may the angel who redeemed me from all evil bless the children, and let my name be named in them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them flourish like fish for the multitude, and so forth and so forth. So angels are really part also of Jewish tradition. And more of it, of course, you can find when you go into Kabbalah, into to Jewish mysticism. There, angels are being mentioned left and right. So it is part also of Jewish tradition, and not only, for example, in Christianity, where especially within Catholicism, angels play a major role. So now let's go back to the beginning. The first inclination, or the first hint that there may be beside God some other heavenly creatures surrounding God can be found already in Genesis chapter 1, in the story of creation, when God says, this is Genesis 1:26, and God said, let us make humankind in our image, after our likeness. Okay, so there are all sorts of interpretations. Who are the us that God is talking to? Of course, some suggest that God is simply using what we call the royal we, but there are many other interpreters who suggest that God is talking to the heavenly hosts, which eventually became what we call today angels. And that understanding that God was talking on sort of consulting with the angels, you can find it in many midrashim, stories within the rabbinic literature. I'm going to bring only one, but this is one out of many. In most of these stories, God is asking the angels, what do you think? Should I create human beings? And the angels do not suggest that it's not a good idea. And nevertheless, God creates the humans. So this is from the Babylonian Talmud. Yes, at the time that the Holy One, blessed be He, sought to create a person, He created one group of ministering angels. So He created the angels first. He said to them, if you agree, let us fashion a person in our image. The angel said before Him, Master of the universe, what are the actions of this person you suggest creating? God said to them, his actions are such and such according to human nature, which is understood as that they will sin, they will do all sorts of troubles and stuff like this. So the angel said before Him, Master of the universe, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you think of him? This is a verse from Psalms, which here the angels are turning it, the rabbis are turning it around to be a negative question. What are you thinking about to create human beings? You just told us about all these negative things about them. Such a creature as this is not worth creating. God outstretched His small finger among them and burned them with fire. And the same occurred with the second group of angels. The third group of angels that He asked said before Him, Master of the universe, the first two groups who spoke their mind before you, what did they accomplish? The entire world is yours. Whatever you wish to do in your world, do. And then God created the first person. That means the angels are against the idea of creating human beings. God, in His anger at their response, is killing some of them. and the rest of them say, you know what, you're the boss, you can do whatever you want. And once they said it, God created human beings. So that kind of story, you find many versions of this kind of story in the rabbinic literature. I just gave you one of them. Of course, the Talmud is solving with this another question is, when were the angels created? Because at the beginning, there was only God who created the world. So they suggested that God created the angels and then consulted with them. Okay. The next time that we read something that can suggest some divine entities in this very strange story in Genesis chapter 6, and that is right before the flood, there is an inserted this strange story. Now it was when humans first became many on the face of the ground, and women were born to them. So that's when humans started to multiply, that the divine beings saw how fair the human women were, so they took themselves wives, whomever they chose. The Lord said, my rushing spirit shall not remain in humankind for ages, for they too are flesh. Let their days be 120 years. The giants were on earth in those days, and afterwards as well, when the divine beings came into the human women, and they bore them children, they were the mighty ones who were of ages past, the men of name. So we have here a situation where the Hebrew actually says the sons of God, which does not suggest literally children, physical children of God, but the angels or the entities, the divine entities that surround him, came down from heaven. They came down to earth because they looked down and they saw the human women, how sexy they are. They married them and they had children, and these children became the giants and the mighty men that are mentioned later in stories. For example, the story of David and Goliath and so forth. And also, if you remember, the spies, when they came back from spying, that Moses sent, when they came back from spying, they mentioned that there are giants in the land, that we were like grasshoppers compared to them. So these are the giants that are the result of this encounter between the divine spirits or the angels who came down to earth and had sex with the women upon earth. Yes, we have many stories like this in other mythologies, especially in Greek mythology. So this is just an example of a story like this. And it clearly suggests that there are entities, divine entities, whom the text is using the word, the sons of God. And that same term, the sons of God, is also mentioned later in the book of Job, in two places. I'll just read one of them. This is Job chapter 1, verse 6. Yes, when this is the background of the story of Job. One day the divine beings, or the sons of God, present themselves before the Lord, and the adversary came along with them. So God is having some sort of a staff meeting. Yes, so these are the sons of God come to the meeting with him, and one of them was the adversary with whom eventually God is having a bet about Job, but you're not going to get into all these stories. Then we have also throughout the Bible cases of messengers from God who are coming to talk to people. We have the three messengers who are coming to visit Abraham. We have the messenger who come to the judge Gideon, the messenger who came to the parents of Samson, and so forth. The word in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, for a messenger is malach, which in modern Hebrew became the word for an angel. So although you could use it even in modern Hebrew as a messenger, today in modern Hebrew, when somebody says malach, it is understood that you're talking about an angel. But it is important to realize that these entities, they come as messengers of God. Yes, we are not yet talking about an entity that is defined with a character of its own and so forth. It is some sort of a divine entity that takes the shape of a human being, comes to the human and gives them the message from God, and then they disappear. So the word angel itself, if you think about the English word of angels, come from the Greek angelos, and angelos actually means messenger in Greek. Yes, so it's the same thing. But then once it became the word angel. Nobody thinks about angel as a messenger, just as a messenger, but an entity. Yes, today we think about it as a creature with the white wings and a halo and so forth. But that is something that is more came later. Now, in the case of Samson, it's a little bit more complicated because in all other cases, the messenger simply comes and gives a message, like a message to the judge Gideon, or the message to Isaac, to Abraham, that he is going to have a son, and so forth. But in the text of the story of Samson, the messenger visits the wife, the mother of Samson, twice when she is alone, and the words that are being used there have some sexual connotation. So many scholars ask the question: did this messenger, this divine messenger, did he only deliver a message, or did he do more than that, which led eventually to the mother of Samson to become pregnant? I'm leaving it up to you to decide which way you are going to read, in which way you're going to read the text. Okay. Later on, we find also divine entities in some images that in Isaiah sees winged sphinx surrounding the divine. Winged sphinx are some sort of creatures with the face of a man and the body of an animal and wings. Yes, and they are called seraphim. They declared, yes, the holy, and so forth. And we have the Ezekiel has the images like this of some sort of divine entities. And by the time that we come to the book of Daniel, and Daniel is one of the latest books, if not the latest book that was written in the Hebrew Bible. Scholars believe that the book of Daniel was written at the time of the rule of Antiochus Epiphanes. That we know him, you know this name from the story of Hanukkah, that is the time when the book of Daniel was written. So it is very late in the progression, something like 165 BCE when this book was written in the Second Temple period. There in the book of Daniel, we have some angels that actually have names, which is quite unusual before, and also a group of angels. And in the book of Daniel, the angels are called, that is in the Aramaic section of the book of Daniel, and the Aramaic word that is being used for these angels is Irin, which comes from the Hebrew, from the similar Hebrew word of being awake, because angels never sleep. So these are angels that are watching all the time. So sometimes they are translated as the watchers, because they watch, they never sleep, they never close their eyes, they can watch all the time. And sometimes, and there is a particular group among them that is called the angels of the presence, whose task is to go and inform people and teach human beings certain skills. Okay, but Daniel is also mentioned specific angels with names, and that is the first time that we have an angel that actually has a name. If you remember, for example, if it was an angel who fought with Jacob that night when his name was changed to Israel, Jacob is asking him, "What is your name?" But that person, who is supposedly a divine entity that was sent to him to struggle with him, refuses to give a name. And the judge Gideon, when the messenger comes to him, also asks, "What is your name?" And the messenger refuses to say a name. So this is the first time in the book of Daniel that we actually have a name of an angel, and that the angel Michael, for example, there's one of them, there's another name angel there, and Michael has a particular role. This is particular angel that is the protector of Israel. And there you start to see in the book of Daniel the idea that each nation has an angel who is assigned to this nation. So there is an angel who is assigned to Israel, and there is an angel who is assigned to the Babylonians or to the Persians, and so forth. Maybe this is the beginning of what was developed eventually as the Catholic doctrine that actually believes that every person has a guardian angel. Every person has a personal guardian angel. That is something that, of course, was evolved much later. Okay. Now, I want to remind you something that was mentioned in many different lectures by the Haberman Institute by different scholars, and that is that we have to realize that the Hebrew Bible itself is not really a monotheistic document. It promotes not monotheism, but it promotes what we call monolatrism, which is the belief that maybe there are many gods, but I choose to worship only and have a relationship only with one God. Yes. So, for example, we all know there's the statement in the song of the sea. Yes, when Moses says, "Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai," yes, which other God is like you, O God? Yes, that acknowledges the idea that there are other gods, but the God of the Israelites, the God of the Bible, is the best of the best, the greatest, and so forth. And that idea is described also is described in many different statements in the Bible, including, for example, in the Ten Commandments, when the commandment is, "You shall not have another God beside me." The Ten Commandments does not say, "There is no other God beside me." It just said, "You Israelites are coming to an exclusive relationship with me, God, and I'm the only one that you're allowed to worship. You're not allowed to worship any other God." It does not deny the existence of other gods. It only says, you Israelites are not supposed to engage in a relationship with any other God but the God of Israel, I guess the God of the Bible. So we start to see some ideas of monotheism when we come to maybe to second Isaiah, which is a late prophet post destruction of the first temple, and really at the beginning of the period that we call the Second Temple period. There you find some ideas of that God, the God of the Bible, the Lord, yes, he is the only God. There is no other God beside him. But the idea that there is only one God is really something that was developed during what we call the Second Temple period in post Hebrew Bible time. Sometimes it develops sometimes between the 5th century to the 2nd century before the Common Era. I don't think that we can point out a particular date or anything like that, but sometimes in the 300-400 years that passed after the end of the Bible, if you want, with the prophet Malachi, more or less, then Judaism developed into what we call monotheism, with the idea that there is only one God, and that is the God with whom Israel has a covenant and Israel has a relationship. So with that we can see also a strong development of the idea of the heavenly hosts and the whole bunch of divine entities whom we call now angels, as sort of assistants of God. Yes, they are up there in heaven with God, and they are doing a lot of the work instead of God Himself. So it is really quite fascinating that together with the development from many gods into one God, they also became the tradition, flourished the tradition. This is also, it is only one God. This God has a lot of divine entities that are helping him, and these are the angels. So we have some books that describe the job of these entities, of these angels. In particular, there are two books that were written sometimes between 300 BCE to maybe 150 BCE. One of them is a book very important book that did not make it into the canon. That means it's not part of the Hebrew Bible, but it is a very important book to understand the belief and traditions of Second Temple period, and that is the book of Hanoch in Hebrew, or Enoch, as you say in English. Yes, and Enoch, if you have to remember that Enoch was in the genealogy list from Adam to Noah. There was Enoch, and Enoch is one person who did not die, but God took him. God took him, and the tradition is that Enoch is in the Garden of Eden, sitting in the Garden of Eden, and he is watching us and is writing down things that he have seen. and he is being in contact with the angels, and so in this book, in this book, we have a whole series of messages that were delivered to Enoch by the angel Uriel. So here we have again an angel by name. Now, the book of Enoch was written in Hebrew. Was written in Aramaic. We don't have any copy of the book of Enoch, the full book of Enoch, in the original Aramaic, although in the Dead Sea Scrolls, remnants of this book, some pieces of that book in Aramaic were found. The only text that we have of the book of Enoch in the full text is in the language Gez, which is the ancient Ethiopian dialect. Yes, so we have only it in Gez, so it's already a translation from the origin Aramaic. So in part of the book of Enoch, or this is Enoch 1 that I said because there's also an Enoch 2, but the one that is interesting for us in Enoch 1 is a whole section that is maybe used to be a book by itself, which is called the book of the Irim. Remember, Irim were the name of the angels, the one who are all the time awake. Yes, and many English translations therefore call it the book of the watchers. Okay, so the term Irim used to be a term for all angels. Eventually, in other later books, the Irim are really the angels who became bad, or what we call eventually the fallen angels, like the angels who came down and had sex with the women upon earth. So here, we have, for example, in Enoch 1, chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. And it came to pass, this is the story, the same story that we read in Genesis. And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heavens, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, come, let us choose as wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. Okay, so one of the things that the angels did was that they actually betrayed their mission, and instead they went and engaged in sex with the women on earth. More than that, the angels also taught the humans all sorts of things that eventually led to all sorts of trouble. So this is Enoch chapter 1 chapter 8 verses 1 and 2. And Asael, this is one of the Irim, one of the angels, taught men to make swords and daggers and shields and breastplates. And he showed them the things after these, and the art of making them, bracelets and ornaments, and the art of making up the eyes, and of beautifying the eyelids, and most precious and choicest of stones, and all kinds of colored dyes, and the world was changed. And there was great impiety and much fornication, and they went astray, and all their ways became corrupt. This is an effort in the book of Enoch to explain what was the sin that caused God to bring the flood. So the sin was that people they had sword and daggers, so you start to see violence. And on the other hand, they also taught the women how to beautify themselves and how to make themselves attractive to men, and that led to fornication and behavior that was totally unacceptable. So that described to us that described to us they give us the reason for eventually the flood. And then we see that in the book of Enoch we start also to get some angels with particular jobs or particular mission, and therefore they are mentioned by name. They are not part of the group, but they are individuals with particular things that they have to do. So let's read, for example, in chapter 40, verses 8 to 9. After that, I asked the angel of peace who went with me, who showed, this is Enoch writing, who showed me everything that is hidden. Who are these four presences which I have seen and whose words I have heard and written down? And he said to me, the first is Michael, the merciful and long-suffering. This is, remember that in the book of Daniel, Michael was the angel who is the protector of Israel. And the second, who is set over all diseases, over all the wounds of the children of them, is Raphael. Raphael is, in Hebrew, that means he is the one who cures. And the third, who is set over all powers, is Gabriel. And the fourth, who is set over the repentance upon the hope of those who inherit eternal life, is named Phanuel. And these are the four angels of the Lord's spirits and the four voices I heard in those days. So we have a whole bunch of angels in group, the Irim, but we also have angels, individual angels that are mentioned, and they have a name and they have a particular character and particular job. Okay, I'm starting to run out of time because I need to leave time for questions, so I'm going to go a little bit faster. The second book that was written, probably also but affected by the book of Enoch, so it's clear that the author knew about it, is the book of Jubilees, that was written sometimes in the second century, between the second and first century of the Common Era. This book was extremely important. We have copies of that book more than any other book in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There are remnants of copies of the book of Jubilees, and the book of Jubilees is also mentioned in some of the scrolls that describe the life of the Qumran community. Apparently, they followed a lot of the ideas of the book of Jubilees. So I'm going just to read quickly, to read Jubilees. Jubilees answer the question when the angels were created. Yes. So here, this is Jubilees chapter 2, verses 3 to 6. For on the first day he created the heavens which are above, and the earth and the waters and all the spirits which serve before him, the angels of the presence and the angel of sanctification and the angel of spirit of fire and the angel of the spirit of the winds and the angel of spirit of the clouds and of darkness and of snow and hail and so forth and so forth. Basically, you see that angels, that according to Jubilees, there were angels that created, and each one or each group had a responsibility that used to be the responsibility of gods. So you have the god of the sea, now you have the angel of the sea. You have the god of fire, now you have the angel of fire, and so forth. So in the book of Jubilees, we see angels are playing a major role. The whole book is basically an angel dictating the book to Moses when Moses is on Mount Sinai. And so we have and fornicated with the women upon earth. How come? Oops. How come the angels? How come there is still evil? Evil, yes, and Jubilees says that the senior angel called Mastema, which is really the archetype of what we call today the devil, came before the Lord and asked to let him live and let him continue because he has a job to do. And God eventually agreed to keep that angel and his helpers, the demons, to help them, to let them stay until the day of judgment, the beginning of the Messianic era. That's when all the evil, what eventually developed into Satan, will be crushed, and we come to the utopian time of the modern era. All right, I have to skip a lot of stuff because I'm running out of time. So let me just mention to you one thing that I find, two things that I find interesting. First of all, that eventually we come to the point that people started to believe in angels and also started to pray to angels, and we have actually a warning in the Jerusalem Talmud, yes, not to do that. Yes, if a person is in trouble, he should cry neither to Michael nor to Gabriel, rather he should cry to me and I shall answer him immediately. Yes, so there is an effort to avoid the kind of worship, if you want, of angels. There's an effort to avoid that, and we see really quite a it's a tension between the need of people to have the ability to ask for things, and not only to ask for this God that we cannot really see and touch and feel, and on the other hand, the idea that we should not worship anything but God. Interestingly enough, when we come to Josephus, who wrote, the historian Josephus Flavius, who wrote the Antiquities of the Jews at the end of the 1st century to the Common Era, we find something very interesting, and that is the fact that Josephus is trying to get rid of the idea of angels. Why it became quite a common idea? He's trying to actually to suppress it so in his retelling of the biblical story, he is trying to suppress it completely. So, for example, in the book of Kings, we have Elijah escaping from the Jezebel, who is trying to kill him, and an angel or messenger of God is giving him food and telling him to continue in his trip and so forth. When Josephus is telling the same story, he says, yes, Elijah lay and slept under a certain tree, and when somebody awakened him, it doesn't say it was a divine entity or anything like this, and he was risen up, he found food set by him and water, so he had eaten, recovered his strength, and continued. So Josephus tries not to stress the idea of angels, probably because he was writing to pagans. And he is writing a book, by that time, he's writing a book, a monotheistic book, about the one God who created the world and the one God who controls everything. And he was afraid that if he will talk about divine entities, that will be close to the idea of the pagans of polytheism, of having many gods. So he's trying to suppress it all throughout, the book. So I'm going to end in one more thing, and that is the fact that we still have this tension today. Yes, on one hand, in the book of Exodus, for example, we read we read Moses is telling the people, yes, no, Moses is telling the people when God told him to say that, yes, look, I'm sending a messenger before you to guard you along the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him and obey his voice, that the messenger, that the angel. Do not rebel against him, because he will not forgive your transgression, because my name is him. But then in the Haggadah, on Passover, when we one of the texts in the Magid that we say, God brought us out of Egypt, not by the hands of an angel, and not by the hand of seraph, and not by the hands of a messenger. And I will pass through the land of Egypt, I myself, not an angel. So the tension continues today between the idea whether there are angels, should we pray to angels, and so forth. Unfortunately, we find today a new tradition that instead of praying to angels and worshiping angels, we find in some Jewish sects a different approach, and that is to pray on the graves of great sages, believing that through them you can get something, women who cannot get pregnant, and so people who are sick and so forth. So these tzaddikim, these great sages, have replaced in many cases the angels, but that is another topic for another lecture. So I think I will stop here, and if there are any questions, I would love to answer them.
Yes. Hi, Gideon. Thank you for such a fascinating lecture full of interesting texts. And I think you can, if your share screen is still up, I think you can go ahead and bring that down. There you go. We received a number of questions about the gender of angels, at least 4 or 5 questions, as they have relations with females. So the questions about are there any female angels, or are they only male, or what are they? God is being genderless. How can angels? So if you have more to say about that aspect of the tradition.
That is a very good question. So first of all, just to mention, in Hebrew, everything has gender. So also when we talk about, and the choice, whether something is male or female, is many times arbitrary. Yes, it is no particular reason, but that's a part of the language. So when we talk about God, we use God in masculine without any suggestion that God has a gender, that God is actually a male, or that God has any sexuality and so forth. When you come to angels, except for that one story about the messenger of God, who was the sons of God who came down and had sex with the women, in all the other stories, the angel is just a messenger who brings a message. So there's no sexuality or any gender that is involved. All the cases and all the later on, all the angels have the angels that are identified by name are all understood to be all have male names. Raphael, Michael, Gabriel, and so forth. That does not suggest that angels are men or that angels are males. I don't know. They are very. Besides that story, there are no other stories about in Jewish tradition about angels who engaged in sex or anything like this. So they are really asexual creatures. But what it is really fascinating that there is never that I don't know about any angel who has a female name in Jewish tradition. As a matter of fact, I I gave a short lecture on this topic to a group of Catholics, and I asked them, are they angels, female angels? And they could not think about any female angel, although one woman said that she knows that her guardian angel is a female. But otherwise, so I would say that all angels are males, but that does not, you cannot add to that the whole idea of sexuality and so forth.
Thank you. There's a few questions relating, like you mentioned, working with Catholics. There's a few questions about Christianity and sort of where the Book of Enoch fits in. And I also noticed you had a few Christian texts on your sheet. If you just want to say a couple of words about
Yes.
Christianity and angels.
Yes, so the Book of Enoch is a Jewish book. It's not a Christian book. It was written about 300 BCE. That means about 300 years before Jesus, yes, before Christianity. So this is clearly a Jewish book and not a Christian book. By the time that we come, the Book of Enoch demonstrates that the belief in angels became part of the mainstream belief of people. And we see that in the Book of Enoch, we see that in the Book of Jubilees, and therefore it makes total sense that by the time that we come to the first century of the Common Era, to the story of Jesus, that in the New Testament, angels are assumed to exist. And we have, in my handouts, you can find the quotes in the Gospel of Matthew. An angel is coming to Joseph and telling him that he's the woman that he's going to marry, Mary, sorry for the pun, yes, is pregnant, but it does not mean that she was unfaithful to him and had sex with somebody else, because she is pregnant through God. Yes, and Joseph is to marry her and to raise the son, that child, as if it was his. In the Gospel according to Luke, it's the angel Gabriel who comes to Mary to tell her, hey, you are going to become pregnant. And she says, what are you talking about? I have never been with a man. And he says, yes. And he tells her that this will be through God and that she will become pregnant. And there are other places where angels are mentioned. But it is natural, because by that time it became part of everybody's understanding that there are also angels.
Great, thank you. There's a number of questions that are sort of more, I would say, more theological in nature about why angels don't really fit into a sort of the modern contemporary concept of angelic. Like they're arguing with God and they're lusting after women and teaching humans war. And so I guess part of the question is, how did this mentality change to sort of how we see angels today, or in contemporary culture, how they're more often seen? And one person sort of, maybe gives some lens to that and says that maybe some of these texts about angels are helping us understand the world today, how things came about into the world today. So I don't know if you have more to say about that aspect.
I do think, as I mentioned, together with the idea of monotheism came also the idea of angels. And I think, this is my guess. My guess is that sometimes it's a little bit difficult just to have a relationship with this transcendent entity that we call God, that we cannot see, we cannot hear, we cannot touch, who is out of this world but part of this world, and so forth. It's quite complicated and quite difficult for people. So people are looking for something that is more accessible, if you want. and angels is one or something that seems to be more accessible. Yes, just like that we need. We are not supposed to. We are not supposed to worship anything physical or anything like that. But humanity, we need something physical. So in Christianity you have the cross. In Judaism, when the Torah is taken out, people kiss the Torah. That's a physical act. Yes, but it's part of human nature that we need something like that. And I think that belief in angels can help some people to have something that they can rely on, and that you find that more in Christianity than in Judaism. But as I said, in Judaism now you find this, I cannot go all the way to God, so I can go to the grave of this great rabbi, and I pray there, and through him maybe I can get to it. The message can get to God.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that answer. It's definitely true of human needs to connect to something intermediary. A more specific question. There's a couple people have asked about, and I don't have the Hebrew in front of me, but Phaneal or one of the angels mentioned that you mentioned, Phaneal, and whether or not that's Uriel.
Uriel, Gabriel, Pnuel, and Michael. These are the four angels.
So I believe in your text you had one that was Phanuel.
Pnuel, yes.
And so where does somebody asked if that's another name for Uriel, or why that angel isn't in the Shema?
Remember, the book of Enoch, this is from the book of Enoch, chapter 1. The book of Enoch was written in Aramaic. Then it was translated to Ge'ez, and from there we now translate back into English or to Hebrew even. Yes. So I think that what came here in the English as Panuel, it may very well be something like Pniel or Pneiel, the face of God, which is the name, which is the place, the name of the place that Jacob called the place where he struggled with the angel. He called it Pnuel, which means I actually saw God or something like God face to face. So I think that's the idea of that name.
Thank you. And is it true of other names? Somebody asked about like Raphael being associated with healing, like
yes.
Like doctor. Do the other names
yes.
angels?
So Michael is really is a name that means Michael, who like God. Yes, that's the meaning of the name. Gabriel comes from strength, from gever, from being strong, gibor, or strong in Hebrew. Raphael, Rapha means to cure. Yes, doctor is a rofe in Hebrew. So Raphael is the angel who is responsible for curing, and so forth. Yes, and Moses, when Miriam got leprosy, Moses is saying, Elna refanala. Yes, the same word. God, please heal her. Yes, it's the same word.
Great, thank you. We're right at about 1 o'clock now. I don't know, Gideon, there's a number of other questions, but if you have any final thoughts, or if you want to answer more questions, let me.
I can answer. I definitely can answer more questions, and then I'll give you final thoughts if I have to think about that for a second.
Yeah, so for those of you, I know it's 1 o'clock, and so for those of you that need to go, thank you for joining us. If some of you would like to stay for a few more minutes, we'll answer a few more questions. And I also just want to make us a plug. Gideon is teaching a number of classes this upcoming year. including one on Jubilees, which a few texts were for today. So if you want to learn more about Jubilees or some texts that maybe you haven't learned before, it'll be a great opportunity. So I don't know if you can just let me know if this is sort of out of your realm of knowing, but somebody asked about Rambam and whether or not Rambam saw seeking out angels as a form of idolatry.
I think I don't know a lot about it. I guess that's beyond the scope. That way I made the scope of the lecture from Bible to Josephus. Yes. I think that Rambam would consider praying to angels and as idolatry. The only entity that you can pray to is God Himself. But this is a little bit beyond the scope of my knowledge.
Great, thank you. I also see the hand raise feature popped up. It's easier for me to see the questions if you type them into the Q&A box for those of you who raised your hand. There's a question here, just a simple question to answer. The word Irim suggesting watchers. How is that word spelled in Hebrew?
It's an Aramaic word, Ayin, Yud, Resh, Yud, Nun. But it's in Aramaic, it's not Hebrew, only the Hebrew and Aramaic have the same alphabet, yes? So, and therefore the Hebrew, it comes from the similar Hebrew word er, which means to be awake. Yes, and so the whole idea is that angels, unlike us, angels don't sleep. They are, and from there probably came the term the watchers, because their eyes are open all the time, so they watch all the time.
And I'm sorry, I'm reading this question here that is asking about Christian iconography with angels and wings and sort of that imagery. Do Jews have any sorts of iconography like images that have been created in for angels?
Not to my knowledge. At least I am not aware of any. I am not aware of any kind of iconography in Jewish tradition. I don't think also that in general, the description of an angel, the whole idea, the iconography shows the angel with the halo and the wings and so forth. That I don't think that this is the image of angels in Judaism. The image of angels in Judaism would be probably more like a man in white robe or something like this, and beard. That would be. But I am not familiar with any. Actually, well, I think Chagall in one of his pictures has an angel, but that is an angel with wings in one of his pictures, if I think about it. But otherwise, I'm not familiar. Definitely not with religious iconography.
Thank you. There's a question here. We have the books of the Book of Jubilees and some of those other texts. Are there other do biblical historians think there's other source material than the Book of Genesis that they may have had or may have used to develop their stories?
I don't think so, but the Book of Jubilees reflects. It reflects two things. It reflects, first of all, it reflects ideas that have been developed. And the Book of Jubilees, for example, is trying to answer a lot of questions that the Book of Genesis leaves open. Yes, I gave the example of the flood. we have the flood as it says that people were evil. There was a lot of evil, but there's no details. What was really the evil that was caused God to bring the flood, So both the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees are trying to give an answer to that. More than that, you think about the slavery in Egypt. There is no reason given in the book of Genesis for the slavery in Egypt. So you come to Second Temple period when people are rewriting these stories. They are adding stuff, just like the rabbi did later on in Midrashim. This is the beginning of this tradition of adding stuff in order to explain the things that are missing in the text. But you see, of course, look, the whole idea, for example, of the fact that we are made out of two parts, the body and soul, is not biblical. The Bible believes that we are one, and therefore when we die, we go to this repository place called Sheol. There is no afterlife, no nothing. Through the Greeks and Zoroastrians, so from two different sources, eventually it became part of belief in Judaism, and Judaism adopted it as part of theological understanding that we are made of two parts. We are made of body and soul. So that is something that you can see reflected already in these books. So you have an influence, outside influence, that added to the understanding and to the way in which these authors of these books explained the text. But the main source are the stories that are in the Bible itself.
Thank you. And I think as a sort of a final question, and then if you have any words to say, but there's several questions about different types of angels in Jewish tradition. Like if there's, somebody mentioned cherubim, and or I don't know if you've looked into any of that in Jewish tradition.
Well, of course, the idea of Satan was not of the devil, was not really a Jewish idea. It became. You can see it a little bit in the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees, but it became developed to a much greater extent in Christianity, and through Christianity it came back also into Judaism. So you find it in rabbinic literature. It's called by different name. Ashmedai and other names for the same entity like Satan. But for example, the term Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, yes, that is a term that you find quite a lot. So they are not only good angels, yes, the angels like the angel who is responsible to protect Israel, the angel Michael or Michael in the book of Daniel and so forth. They are also the evil forces, and they are sometimes depends. It's impossible to talk today about Judaism in general. There's almost nothing that I can say that apply to all Jews. But there are definitely within Judaism, there are groups who believe in different angels, and also in good angels, and in bad, also with bad angels.
Great.
Final thoughts. I don't know. I had to limit. You saw that I did not even have time to cover everything that I prepared because of lack of time. I think that it could be a very interesting something for future study and future talk about the development of the idea of angels and other kind of beliefs within rabbinic Judaism and beyond. Yes, that is something that we had to stop with Josephus, and that really before what we call the rabbinic era. The rabbinic era started really after the destruction of the temple, but continued and continues even today. So that could be a very interesting continuation at some point. But what I really find fascinating, or I found fascinating, is the fact that the idea that there must be some other kind of entities beside God creeps into the Bible, in different places and in different stories. That means somehow this omnipotent God who can say, think light and there is light, and think this and it happens. Yes, he creates effortless creation, what we call. Somehow we need to sort of look at God more in human eyes because of our limitations, and we cannot do everything ourselves. We need others to help us to do this. Yes, so we need a doctor, we need a mechanic, we need this. And somehow humans needed God to have helpers because it's impossible that God can do everything by himself. Although on one hand he can, but on the other hand it's impossible to comprehend, and therefore we need to give him helpers to do it. And I think that's what is emerging out of the Bible, and I find that quite fascinating.
Yes, thank you. You've given us so much to think about and reflect upon, so many layers of texts and history and theology. So thank you again, and thank you all. Yep. Thank you all also for joining us. And as I said before, Gideon is teaching a number of classes this fall and ongoing. So if you're able to join us, that'd be wonderful. And all the information's on our website. So I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.